Hello. Today's topic for this talk is sympathectomies. My name is Kerrigan Madden. I'm a sympathectomy victim myself, and I'm here to provide insight for this discussion. Here with me is Roko Mijic. He's a popular poster on the social media platform X and rationalist. Thanks for being here with me, Roko.
Really appreciate it, Kerrigan. We've spoken a bit about sympathectomies. Perhaps you should just start from the beginning. What is a sympathectomy? What kind of operation is it? And why might somebody get one?
A sympathectomy is an operation that removes nerves from the peripheral nervous system in the torso. Patients get sympathectomies either for extreme excessive sweating that is debilitating and prevents people from entering into professions they want to. And sympathectomies are also performed for long QT, which is a heart condition. And sympathectomies are performed for excessive blushing. In all cases, we would like these to get stopped because in all cases, there are much better alternatives.
Yeah. And a sympathectomy is an operation that basically cuts some of these nerves, like key nerve bundles in your torso, right?
That's right. And sympathectomies are advertised as cutting as minimally invasive, well-established, and well-regarded in the literature. But unfortunately, the nerves that are cut control so much more than blushing, sweating, and heart rate.
Right.
We believe that this issue is so serious that it has been compared often to the lobotomy from the 20th century. In fact, there was recently an article on Business Insider which did make this comparison to a lobotomy, and we are happy that the issue is now getting traction.
Yeah, and like a lobotomy, for those people who don't know, is basically where, doctors will take like some sharp implement and like stick it up into your eye, bore into your brain, and like destroy some of your brain tissue, which basically sort of kills the person's like actual personality, but their body still moves. So it's basically like an operation that sort of zombifies somebody. So lobotomies are obviously illegal now. You're not allowed to perform them. At least I think they're illegal. They should be, because they are basically a way of sort of murdering somebody without murdering them. But they were popular in the past because, some people with psychiatric conditions would pose a problem for their friends and family, and from the outside, it kind of like this person turns from like a sort of problematic, aggressive, or overly assertive person into sort of like this well-behaved little zombie that doesn't cause problems. And so, they actually sort of were happy with that. So, lobotomies have become widely derided, and have become an example of medical malpractice and, a gross abuse of the medical profession. And we think that sympathectomies are sort of the 21st century equivalent of this.
And the sympathectomies are not obviously as debilitating because they cut nerves in the torso. They don't go directly into your head. In fact, I've spoken with professional doctors who are unaware that, for example, somebody's cognitive abilities could be impacted if you cut nerves from the torso. But I think that the distinction between the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system oftentimes is not so clear in many aspects of consciousness and cognition.
Sure. But like, can you describe like what exactly it's like to have had multiple sympathectomies done, and what effects has it had on your conscious experience and your general experience of life?
The sympathectomies completely and utterly destroyed my ability to experience a wide range of conscious experiences that people take for granted going through life. The experience, the ability to laugh, the ability to cry, the ability to experience joy, sadness, frustration, anger, arousal, even capacity to enjoy food and drink, spending time with your loved ones. Many people report after sympathectomy that their loved ones don't make them happy anymore to nearly the same extent.
So it's a sort of like a robotization operation. You can
Correct.
still think logically, like you're coherent with me right now, but you can't, like, experience the joy of oh my God, there's going to be such a good meal, or I'm really looking forward to this event, or oh my God, there's this beautiful woman, I want to, maybe approach her or something. You just don't, it's just all blank.
Correct. And when people think about what is valuable in life, all of that is destroyed with a sympathectomy. There just is no ability to feel. In terms of coherence, though, I will say that the sympathectomy does mess with cognitive function. As conscious experiences tend to act as the kind of markers for momentum in the brain. If you're experiencing some kind of joy, you tend to keep participating in the activity that you're doing. If you're experiencing pain, you tend to try to avoid what you're doing to avoid the pain. And these markers for momentum are destroyed, and therefore functionality is often destroyed from a sympathectomy. Patients report extreme fatigue. Some patients have been bedridden for decades. And sympathectomies can lower somebody's IQ and leave them with an internal mental state that is a lot less coherent.
Right.
I hope I sound relatively coherent right now, but my internal state feels somewhat uncomfortable to be alive moment by moment. And my internal
Right.
monologue is not as coherent as it was before.
Right. And before you got this, you were, like a high achieving pupil. You went to which college was it to study?
I went to UC Berkeley.
You went to Berkeley to study physics, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So you're obviously quite a high achiever, and this operation has in fact, reduced your ability to function, intellectually, but like obviously not to the point of being completely, dysfunctional and confused, but it's like a lower level of functioning, but it has completely removed your emotional state. Basically, it's kind of like an amputation of emotion. So a lot of people watching this might think, surely this is illegal, surely there are medical authorities whose job it is to take care of this, surely there must be some mistake, doctors wouldn't just do this. What would your answer to that be?
Sympathectomies are performed ubiquitously in many countries. And
Have they been banned anywhere?
sympathectomies have been banned in Sweden in 2003, and they have been banned in Taiwan for patients under 20. But elsewhere, they are still being performed to this day. And I'm on a Facebook group of now thousands of people where patients very frequently are very disappointed in the outcomes of their sympathectomies and come on a regular basis to express their distaste. We actually had one mother who reported her son's suicide shortly after his thoracic sympathectomy. He complained about extreme brain fog, which is another issue. When the nerves are cut, I will speak from my own experience. I went through a period of about 3 years of extreme brain fog, where my conscious experience was just replaced by this very repulsive and very suffering intensive fog that to the point where I could hardly speak. Now that's somewhat cleared up now, but the nervous system just cannot cope with essential nerves being removed all at once.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem kind of brutal to just completely cut a large nerve bundle, but apparently they do it. But another question people might have is, surely the doctors would warn you about this as being a common symptom, and you would have to consent to it, right?
No, the doctors do not warn patients of any of the major side effects. I think in part because we don't currently have the tools to measure changes to conscious experience in a way that makes it on the list of side effects that would be on a consent form. So, for example,
Right.
if somebody loses 95% of their capacity to laugh, that is not expressible using today's medical terminology in a sufficient way.
Right. I mean, it's kind of like an operation that, cures sweaty hands, but it makes you into like the Tin Man from the Wizard of Oz. And it's just very hard to scientifically measure that effect of removing your ability to be emotionally active, right? So you can measure when somebody dies, you can measure blood loss, but you can't measure the fact that somebody no longer experiences joy.
You cannot measure currently the most important things that people hold dear in their lives: the ability to love, the ability to laugh, the ability to pursue intellectual interests, the ability to be inspired.
And to be clear, you could physically laugh, like you go ha ha ha, but you wouldn't feel it.
Correct. So the internal feeling of laughter would not be present. And I will say that I've only laughed externally a couple of times in the past 7 years.
Yeah, that's pretty
And
extraordinary.
so that's been completely diminished also. I
Yeah.
will say that sympathectomies are not very well understood, even by most doctors I've spoken with. I spoke with a psychiatrist who was uninformed, did not see how cutting nerves in the torso could affect cognitive ability. So I do think it's also an issue of education. Going back to the lobotomy, it seems a lot more obvious to people that if you go into somebody's head and remove part of their nervous system, then that will be obviously bad. But many people are not aware of how essential functions are carried out in nerves in the torso,
Yeah.
such as reproductive system functioning, digestive system functioning, fight or flight response, which is essential to consciousness in the waking state. And so hopefully part of this video is to get the information out there so doctors and patients can be potentially informed.
Yeah. And like, what do you think some actions are that people could actually do to help? Because it's I mean, it's a kind of a bit of an overwhelming thing. Doctors are performing these kind of 21st century lobotomies, kind of like, Tin Man operation to remove people's emotions. They're not warning people about it. The legal system doesn't want to know. What can people actually do to try and bring this to an end, to prevent people from doing these operations?
Well, I'm happy to say that there is some progress being made. The Business Insider article was a big step up from before. Sympathectomies are notoriously unregulated in the United States, but I will say even countries that do regulate them, they still pass the regulations because the side effects are not very well defined. Perhaps a
What?
petition could be started.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
if you, yeah, I think that would be a good idea. If I mean, you have an account on X where people can follow you, right, to get updates about that.
Lowercase xxx, my last name Madden with a capital M, and then lowercase xxx. And
Okay.
my YouTube channel is my first and last name, Kerrigan Madden. And I have a forum, a blog post on the EA forum, Effective Altruism Forum, called Sympathectomies the New Lobotomy, which is linked
Okay.
to in the Business Insider article.
Okay, cool. And so if there is a petition, you would publicize it on your Twitter, on EA and places like that. But like, what about the legal angle? Surely, this is in some way illegal, or I mean, presumably you can't just perform operations on people and then not tell them about the side effects. It seems pretty crazy, right?
Sympathectomies are legal in many countries. In fact, sympathectomies are being performed on children, advertised on children. There was a 6-month-old who had a sympathectomy performed on, I don't know the gender, on him or her, a 6-month-old. And the mother was absolutely horrified at what had happened. And unfortunately, doctors are concealing negative results because, well, in the case of the YouTube channel Advertising for Children, negative comments get deleted. Many doctors on their websites delete negative comments from patients who are unsatisfied with the results. It's believed that some of the literature that is being published by the doctors is actually fraudulent. So there are many unfortunate things going on. And it's an uphill battle when you have people who are victims of a surgery, especially ones who are debilitated and have a hard time
Right, their
With,
performance,
with
you know, is
going
decreased.
against, right, trying to go against these doctors who all have fancy degrees, who have been performing surgeries for multiple years, in some cases decades, trying to convince people that all these doctors are wrong. And also,
Right, right. So it's a case of this sort of false, you know, false trust in authority when that authority has a huge conflict of interest. But wouldn't the, you know, wouldn't the doctors' own regulatory authorities, you know, the US Association of Surgeons or something like that, eventually get wind of this and crack down? I mean, presumably that's maybe something that we could achieve by drawing attention to it.
that's potentially achievable. Unfortunately, right now, it's just not very well understood why sympathectomies are such a bad idea.
Right. So because doctors are used to dealing in things that are objectively measurable, like blood volume or concentration of a certain hormone or, you know, strength or something like that, when you start talking to them about loss of emotions, they don't really have a good system to evaluate that claim. So they just sort of ignore it. And so this surgery where people's emotions are being basically surgically removed, and because that's what it is, sort of slips under the radar. It's sort of this widespread phenomenon where things which are less legible will tend to be destroyed under optimization pressure because they can't be measured, so they can't be preserved. Um, well, look, that was really useful. Do you have any sort of, you know, parting words for people for how they could help you, what they could do about this, maybe how they could share this?
I would appreciate if people share this video as widely as possible.
Presumably, you could start a petition and people could sign that.
Yes, there have been petitions that have been started. The World Health Organization has been contacted. Not much interest has been shown in sympathectomy victims thus far. We're hoping that we can turn that around. I would be willing to speak with anyone who would, like to know about my situation further.
Right. If there are any experts, people who have expertise in emotions, consciousness, that kind of thing.
Correct, because I think that there can be contrib- things contributing to the discussion on consciousness because sympathectomy patients have had their nervous system directly modified in a major way, in an immediate way. And so I think that, yes, a researcher in consciousness or a neuroscientist may take interest in sympathectomy patients.
And they could contact you via the EA forum or
That's
the
correct.
X app.
Or X.
Yeah.
And you and I actually went into this topic in more detail in our other longer video on my YouTube channel.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks very much, and I really hope we can do something about this.
Thank you very much, Rocco.
Appreciate it.